My indicator for when to plant potatoes is when I start seeing dandelion flowers. There's a technique called phenology, and it's just basically watching for signs of naturally occurring things as indicators of other things that happen. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm out here about to plant some potatoes. And I thought I would do a video on when to plant potatoes because this is a question you get a lot. And I remember when I was a new gardener, I didn't know when to do it. People use calendars, people use the last frost date, they use this sort of thing. There's lots of different indications. In fact, the place I ordered my potatoes from, Vessi Seeds, they don't send you your potatoes until they think you should be planting them. And they haven't sent me my potatoes. These are just ones I saved last year, right? My own saved seed. So even according to, a major provider, they think it's probably too early. And it might be. I'm not planting a lot. I'm just planting a few today. But let me tell you why I'm planting potatoes today. My indicator for when to plant potatoes is when I start seeing dandelion flowers. There's a technique called phenology, and it's just basically watching for signs of naturally occurring things as indicators of other things that happen at the same time. That's the simplest way I could put it, I suppose. And if you do a lot of reading on phenology, lots of people will say, when you see dandelion flowers, plant potatoes. I've been doing that for a few years. It's reliable. Now, there's a few things I do to safeguard that failing on top of that, and it's just the way a gardener thinks, so I'll discuss that as well. Then I'll plant some potatoes. I noticed these flowerings for the last few days. It's early in the morning here, so they haven't really opened up yet. But here's one with some yellow, dandelion. And here's off the same plant, here's one with some actual white, almost gone to seed, right? White fluff. White, when they flowered for a while, the flower turns white and goes to seed, right? So here's one actually beginning to go to seed. So the dandelions have been flowering. Normally, this doesn't happen until the middle of May, so it's been a relatively pleasant spring, I guess. So for me, it means I can plant my potatoes, but I don't plant them all in one go. I have a lot of beds of potatoes in my garden. I grow a lot of them. I eat a lot of them. They go with everything. They're good for you. Dead easy to store. I'm actually still eating last year's potatoes, if you can believe that. I got maybe half a box of potatoes left. They're starting to get eyes and that sort of thing, so they're going to be used up quickly, but suffice it to say, a great thing to grow. But I don't plant them all in one go. I have found these red norland potatoes. These are my own saved seed. I've ordered a bunch of potatoes from Vessi Seeds. They haven't even sent them yet because according to their schedule, it's too early to plant potatoes. But I've noticed over the years that the red norland potato is an exceptionally tough potato. It can handle cold temperatures more than other things. So that's one reason I feel confident that I can plant it today. Another reason is that you got to think about, I'm putting the potato underground. I'm going to plant it about wrist deep underground, and then I'm going to put about a wrist's worth, 6 inches of mulch on top of it. So the actual foliage isn't going to see sunlight for probably 2 or 3 weeks, right? For 2 or 3 weeks, that potato is going to be sending out roots and starting to, wake up and activate, and, it's going to start beginning to grow, but it's not going to actually put its foliage up through the mulch for, 2-3 weeks. So even though we still get frost at night, it doesn't matter because the frost isn't going to be affecting the potato foliage because there isn't any foliage. It's just rooting. And these ones are so tough, I know they'll be okay. So I tend to plant, I do one bed of red norlands as early in the spring. When I see the first yellow dandelion flowers in my yard, I plant one bed of red norland potatoes. I'm sure there's other varieties of potatoes that are like this, but they're very tough. Probably because norland, right? Northland, right? And then, maybe 2 weeks from now I'll plant some more and I'll plant some more. I tend to plant the bulk of my potatoes late May or in June even, because I don't want to have to harvest them. Right? Once the potatoes die, you have to harvest them, and every week you leave them in the ground after the tops die, you run the risk of them getting attacked by different things, right? So I sort of like to time the bulk of my potatoes that I'm saving for winter storage to die around the end of September, when it's getting cool, cooler temperatures, I store all these things in my garage, and I need it to cool down. My garage is unheated. It has a heater, but I keep the heater at the thermostat at 0 in there. I need the potatoes to be ready for harvest around the time when my garage is cool enough to store them well. So I tend to plant a lot in like June, that sort of thing, so that they're all timed to finish then. And of course that also depends on the kind of potato you're growing and its time to maturity. Generally speaking, I think this year I'm planting red Norlands, purple chieftains, russet Burbank, and there's some other one, I think it's called classic Burbank, or traditional classic russet or traditional russet. It's just a basic russet potato, which get bigger than the russet Burbanks. I like russets, and I like those potatoes. They seem to store really well. I've got a bit of, some of the potatoes tend to get scab here. The russets and the russet Burbank are completely scab proof. The red Norland is scab resistant, but it'll still get scab sometimes. Another reason to plant them early and just eat them during the summer. These are a great potato to eat. Some potatoes are ideal for French fries and mashing. These red Norlands are terrible for French fries and mashing. They're good for potato salad, cutting up and putting in a soup, roasting potato. You can even sometimes, the larger ones, I mean these are small seed potatoes that I save, but the ones that are like close to the size of my fist or whatever, I like to cut them in half cook them on the microwave, and then finish them on the grill when you get the barbecue going with, put some olive oil and salt and pepper on them and toast them up like that, right? Anyway, they're completely different, more of a waxy texture. So anyway, there's a number of reasons. What I'm talking around here is a number of good reasons to plant one early bed before everything else. Some people might think it's a bit early for planting potatoes here where I am, and maybe it is, and maybe the first greens and shoots that come out of the ground and be blasted by frost, because these are going to start coming out of the ground maybe the 3rd week of May, right? And we can still get frost in the 3rd week of May here. It happens all the time, and I think it happens almost every year. It's very rare that it doesn't happen here where I am. Usually we're not frost free until like sometime around the 1st week of June, right? That sort of thing. We're not completely past the risk of that. But even with these, even when that happens, the shoots come out of the ground and they get blasted with frost, they seem to be able to shrug that off. It will kill some of the foliage, some of the leaves, but the plant just keeps growing and continues on, right? Also, I'm planting them here in a really sunny spot. South is that way. This is a south-facing slope. I got a south-facing garden bed, right, with a relatively unobstructed view of south, so it's a pretty shiny spot. I used to have a rhubarb plant right here, and I've got rhubarb plants of the same variety on the other side of the garden. The rhubarb plant here would always start growing 2 weeks before the ones over there, so I know this is a good sunny spot. These logs pick up heat from the sun, the ground. It's just a really good spot to grow stuff. So again, I'm planting them on one of the warmer spots in my garden where I know they'll do well. I've planted them here before. But yes, to speak to when to plant potatoes, it really depends on what you want them for, how many you're going to grow, all that sort of thing. If you've only got one bed to plant potatoes, maybe you want to wait a few more weeks. But if I'm probably going to be planting potatoes in about, if we say a bed's a 4x8 space, 7 or 8 beds of potatoes is what I have in my garden. That's how many I grow, right? So I can afford to have one fail. I can risk one, right? I can always replant. I always buy certified seed potatoes, but I always save some. When I'm sorting out my potatoes, I tend to like to keep the larger ones for eating, and around this size, golf ball size. Sure, I eat them, but I have a lot of them, so I tend to put some aside for seed potatoes. I can give them to people, I can use them, whatever, right? So let's plant some potatoes here. I got all the things I need. I got some mulch, I actually got some seaweed. I went to the ocean the other day. I love seaweed and potatoes, go well together. So let me show you how I plant potatoes. Okay, here I got an area in the garden. It's about 3 feet wide by 8 feet long, okay? And I'm just gonna make two reasonably deep rows here. I'm gonna go down about 6 inches using this pickaxe here because it's just a handy tool. One row there, one row there. Just loosening the ground up. Sure, you can lay the potatoes right on top, and a lot of people are going to say, oh, I just put them on top of the soil and put mulch on. You can do that. I find they grow better this way, and you don't need as much mulch, right? I mean, if you're using mulch, you have to source it, right? So I only have so much. You know, we're sort of Halifax is on where I live. It's on lockdown basically because of COVID-19. You're really not supposed to be going anywhere unless you really have to. So I literally can't drive out to the countryside to buy hay and stuff like that. And I'm not driving to and from work, which is my usual source of mulch, is just people's bagged leaves and stuff like that. All right, so I got two rows here. Actually, I decided I'm going to do just one row at a time here so you can see what I'm doing. Also, I don't have any real estate for the excess dirt. So make a little trench like this, right? Okay, potatoes are a challenge for no-till gardeners to wrap their heads around because you got to sort of turn the soil over. You don't have to, but I find it works better if you turn the soil over a bit. Okay, something resembling a trench there. I'm fortunate to have access to seaweed as a resource, and I find if you throw some seaweed in the trench right underneath the potato, the potatoes love it. And people are going to say, aren't you worried about that having salt? No. This seaweed, I didn't fish this out of the sea. I came from above the high tide mark, and it's been rained on for days, so I'm not too worried about that. If you don't have access to seaweed, don't worry about it. Okay, you don't need it. It's just a nice thing to add. If you have a source of it, use it, right? Put these about 6 inches apart. Again, some people just throw them on top of the soil, and you can do that too. I find this works better. All right, I know I'm going to get all these comments. I just do this, I just do that. Yeah, do whatever you want to do, right? And again, you don't need seaweed, right? And we just cover that over. I'll do this row over here. There's a rock in there. Don't want that guy. Put that up there somewhere. The rocks aren't a real problem in general, but this is just the way I do it. I plant the potatoes about 6 inches deep, cover them with soil, then I cover them with mulch. You know, for me, it's not hard to dig a little bit. If you got a bad back, just throw them on top of the soil, but I find I get better results like this. I'm planting these a bit close because they're so darn small, right? You know, when I have a large one like this, I'll give it some space. But little tiny ones like this, I mean, I'm probably only going to get 1 or 2 potatoes off of this anyway. So there's no point in spacing that out. All right, so this one I didn't put seaweed underneath. I'll just throw some on top. Doesn't matter. And potatoes have no problem finding their way through all that. None whatsoever. So just to show that approach again from a bit of a distance, just making a rock there, making a bit of a trench. Bit of seaweed. Again, you don't need seaweed, all right? You don't order it. Don't order seaweed extract. Don't, you know, I just use this because it seems to give me nice potatoes, but you can grow potatoes without it. If you got it, use it. If you don't have it, don't use it. I mean, a lot of people tend to get wrapped up in the secret ingredient when it comes to gardening. They think there's some magic ingredient they have to have. And that's all salesmanship. That's people convincing you of that. It's not reality. There is no magic ingredient. Yeah, right? I mean, you need sunlight and water and stuff like that. If there's any magical ingredients, it's those. But yeah, barring that. Now, it may look like I planted these kind of deep, but that's probably just the camera angle. We're going at the very most 6 inches here, all right? Now we just smooth that out a little bit. And we throw some mulch on it. I got a bit of seaweed here. I'll use that. No, you don't need to run the seaweed through a lawnmower or anything like that. And again, I'm just using seaweed because it's what I have access to. I was out. I was near a place where it can be collected just the other day. So I brought some buckets along and, you know, gathered some seaweed. The dead stuff up above the high tide mark, not living seaweed. All right, I had a little space here I didn't plant any, and I'll show you another way to plant them. I don't believe I planted any in this little space here. I got leeks growing here. They haven't germinated yet, but that's what that space reserved for. I got a little bit of room here, so I thought I'd show you just another way to plant them. And I can't find my regular gardening tool, so I'll just use this digging stick. I just make a couple holes in the ground. Just drive this thing in, kick it over. Right? Drive it in, kick it over. Useful tool, pointy stick. Oldest tool known, probably. Good for lots of things. All right, that's enough to loosen the soil up, and now I just pop one of these in each hole. All right, you don't have to use big tools. You don't have to get overly sophisticated with these things. And smooth the soil over. A little bit of mulch. That'll suppress the weeds. You got bare soil, you're going to get weeds. So we put a bit of mulch on to suppress the weeds, simultaneously feeding the plants as well as it breaks down. This little bit of seaweed is not enough mulch though, so I need some more. Generally speaking, I like seaweed as a mulch for feeding the soil, but for maintaining moisture levels, I actually don't find it to be as good as other mulches. It absorbs a lot of water, but it also dries out. I like, I got some of this straw here. I find that to be a good one. Straw, hay, that sort of thing. This is pretty nasty. It got rained on, but it's fine. Very wet. For potatoes, so again, people are going to say, don't you hill your potatoes? Don't you do this? Don't you do that? No, I don't do any of that. I just mulch them and leave them. Now, I think I need a little bit more mulch than this, honestly. I don't think this is going to be enough. The mulch has to cover the soil and not break down for the duration of the time it takes the potato to mature. For straw, I find it needs about 6 inches. We got about 4 inches now, so I need a little bit more mulch. I'll go gather that around the property here. But that's the general idea. So there's that bed of potatoes, about 3 feet by 8 feet long, planted, didn't take long. This is all I need, aside from adding a couple more inches of mulch, which I'll do today, okay? I brought some over here. I didn't have enough for this bed here, so I need a couple more inches of mulch so we can have 6 inches of just rough mulch. This stuff runs the gamut from being seaweed to straw to even pieces of old raspberry cane, right? Everything, right? The potatoes have no problem finding their way up through that. They're going to stay nice and warm and moist underneath there. As this breaks down and as the soil organisms digest this mulch, every time it rains, those nutrients will be drawn down into the soil where the potato roots are. I'm going to have excellent potatoes. I'm going to have great results. At least I hope so, right? I've done this enough. I'm very high expectation of success here, right? But that's how I do it. You don't need to hill them. You know, using this technique, they go in the ground, you mulch them, you walk away. 2-3 months later, you got potatoes, you harvest them. That's all you got to do. So I hope you found this video interesting. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. And until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.